If I just ask you one simple question, do you remember the last time you binged? And did you really ask yourself why you did it? Because I can really tell you, right? And you can relate. Whenever I would have a bad day and I wanted to binge eat, I would just go to the store and eat food. And my brain was telling me, I want food. So I was like, okay, I also want food. I feel lonely, sad. But do you actually know the fucking reason to it? And that's the real question. And it took me 10 years to understand why I had a binging problem. So from 2016 to 2026, I would binge, I would cut, I would binge, I would cut, binge, cut, binge, cut. And it was horrible, right? But I could confidently say that I actually found a fucking solution. I'm very excited to show you guys. I've been researching a lot on binge eating and on myself. I've been clean for a while now. And hopefully, you guys do not repeat the same cycle as I did for years. And it's been miserable because, you would eat a lot of food, you would feel shame and guilt. And then you would repeat the process the next day. You would do a lot of cardio to burn off all the calories. And you're fucked up mentally. No one really understands you. You talk to your friends and family, they just say, just eat less food. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean, bro? Like, I can't stop eating. And you're eating all the processed chemicals and it's fucking up your health, your gut, everything like that. So hopefully, in this video, I can really show you some truth and it will help you with your journey. So let's get started. So the first thing is, I always thought what was wrong with me? Why did I have this problem? Why was I the only one dealing with binge eating and everyone else in my life, they had a normal relationship with food? So I thought it was genetics, because when I was young, I thought, just because the way my parents raised me, they would allow me to eat a lot of cookies, a lot of chips, processed food, seed oils. I would always, of course, eat home food, but at the same time, maybe eating that processed food at a young age fucked me up mentally, and it may have affected some of my genetics, right? Like there were research that were done that showed some of the blood cells, there was like more of brown tissues for the fat that contained, I think it was called the visceral fat, I believe. And that fat is like the worst kind of fat that you want in your body. So, I always thought it was genetics. And the second thought was, well, maybe I just love food, right? Maybe I just like brownies, chips, Takis, Haagen Dazs, Oreos, Doritos. Maybe I just like them and then I just wanted to indulge in them and feel some pleasure and get some relaxation and fun. And yeah, these are like my favorite food for my whole time. And unfortunately, I barely have any of them just because I built a healthy habit. I still have them once in a while, but not that too extreme. Or, another reason I was maybe I was just fat. Compared to someone else, you might say, "Oh, this is a good physique," but for me, this is called considered fat for me. I like having a six pack, and anything that has over obliques, fat on my chest that looks like man tits, right? And then you barely see any abs. I consider myself fat, and maybe because I was fat, that's why I liked enjoying binge eating. That was one of the other reasons I had in the past. Next is emotions. Well, maybe because I binge ate because I was felt sad, I was felt angry, depressed, bored. So I would binge eat and thinking that that's why I would do it, but that's not really the case. Also, was it stress? So if you have a business, you can relate. You have cortisol stress every single day. If something in your life happens, you have stress, and one of the way that you deal with it is through binge eating and food, and that's how you program your brain into doing that. So whenever you're stressed, you eat a lot of food, and that gives you pleasure and relaxation. And the last thing was punishment, right? Like I did a lot of cardio when I would binge eat. Sometimes there would be 2 to 4 hours of cardio, and then it would be a whole fast throughout the whole day. So I wanted to make sure if I binged like 5,000 calories a day before, I'll be able to burn it all off with cardio and also doing a 24-hour fast. I do not recommend it. It was the worst time of my fucking life. It was bad. So do not do the cardio. Just if you do binge, just accept it and just do a 24-hour fast. No need to do cardio because most of it is just fucking water weight at the end of the day. But this is what I thought it was wrong with me, right? In reality, you could relate to some of this. And the truth is, this is all incorrect, right? Maybe partially true about the genetics, but most of it is incorrect. So what I learned, it was that it was neither of these, right? So I started to research binge eating, and this is what I found out. So the first lesson, right? So I have like 4 lessons. So the first one is I don't know what binge eating actually was, you know. So the reality is that binge eating is not stopping all junk food or processed foods or overeating or giving up sugar. So it's not eliminating all the foods, right? I always thought that, you know, if I just stop eating Takis, Doritos, donuts, Nutella, Oreos, you know, Haagen Dazs, then I would be healthy and I'll have a six pack. No, because if you still eliminate this, you still binge on other food. So it's not that. And what I realized is that, put it simply, binge eating is a lack of control. So you lose control of yourself, which leads to an urge of you wanting to eat, which leads you to binge eat. So this is a picture of me in the store, but essentially that's all binge eating is you get an urge to eat food. So you enact that urge by going outside or buying cookies or eating chips right away. And then that urge depletes. And that's how you satisfy it. And at the moment, right, you have no control. You're just doing what your brain says like a monkey, right? And you know you can relate to this. And that's why it's a lack of control. So it's not about the food, it's mostly about you not being aware that you're binge eating or you're in the process of binge eating. So, binge eating is subjective. It has a different meaning and a definition for me, for you, for anyone else. I remember my binge would be a lot of bread, Nutella, Doritos, Takis, sesame chicken, fries, and my fridge, of course. So if I ate everything in my house, I would go to the fridge, and after the fridge, I would go back to the store, and that would be the cycle usually. And you have to literally write on paper or iPhone notes on what makes a binge happen. Is it overconsumption of calories? Is it eating fast food? Is it processed food? Is it eating till you're beyond full? Most people would say it's eating till you're beyond full. For me, it's also like that. But for other people, it could be a binge definition, could be eating fast food, it could be processed food, it could be, you know, something else. So that's why binge eating is very subjective. Everyone has their own definition on it. So that was the first lesson that I learned. The second lesson is when I go back in time, when I binged last time, I can't really describe why I did it, and the answer is I was not there. So if you do remember the last time you binge, you can't really describe why you did it. You just did it, right? And it's going back to having an urge. And most people would say it's because I was stressed or sad or lonely, but this isn't the case. While yes, I was lonely, sad, and unhappy with myself, I had body dysmorphia as well. But I still had control of my life, right? I could still move my arms, my legs. I could still decide where I want to go or what I want to do. So what was the issue? Well, it was the urge to binge eat from your brain to relieve some pain or gain some temporary pleasure. So the way it works is, you know, you're either controlled by the brain. So the brain tells you, hey, you know, we're dealing with a lot of stress, or we're having a bad day, we're sad, we're lonely, and you crave that attention by eating food. And after a while, that essentially makes the brain build a habit. So whenever you are sad or lonely or, you know, depressed, then food is a way that you can cope with it. And that's how it works, like that. So before you get an urge, which is a thought, feeling, or physical sensation, you feel to grab the chips or cookies or ice cream, and subconsciously, no matter how many times you tell your brain to shut up, it keeps repeating the same thing like you're controlled by a demon, right? So you could relate. It's like when you get an urge to binge, you can't really fucking force yourself to not to. Like it's so powerful, it's so strong that you're just doing what it says, and it's like you're being controlled by a demon at that point. And it looks something like this, right? So you get the urge to binge, and your brain right away attaches that binge eating from habit from many times in life that you have done so. So you've been binge eating for years, just like me. That strong attachment to food is so powerful that it's almost impossible to not give it, because you gave it so much energy, so much of your time, so much of, you know, seeing food as pleasure, that at this point it's like you're fighting a level 99 dragon and you're like level 5. It's like impossible to fucking win, right? So that's why, you know, it's scary because it builds a very strong habit and it's very hard to attach off. And you probably know people who go through life problems, right? So like you might have friends that might be sad, depressed, lonely, but they don't really binge because they don't consider binging as a solution to their problem. It might be something else. It could be like the gym, smoking, or alcohol. And unfortunately, we as people who went through binge eating, we made a habit to associate having an urge to binge eat, and this is why the loop is infinite. So whenever we feel pain or, you know, some emotion, we see food as a comfort, and we build that habit over and over again. Compared to somebody else, they might deal with their situation in a different way. Some people smoke weed. Some people inject, drugs. Some people go to the gym. There's other ways of, dealing with life. But the way we deal with life is with food. And it's fucked up because no one really fucking understands it but us. You can relate to your friends, you can relate to your family, but still at the end of the day, no one fucking can help you except people who lived through this experience like me. And so delusion is action to not do it. So the whole point of it is whenever you get an urge to binge, you do not do it. And it's easy for me to tell you, it's hard to implement. So how do you do it? So let's get to lesson number 3. And the way you do it is you have to be honest with yourself. So this is what I had to be honest with myself. So to put it simply, the urge for you to binge comes from the lower part of your brain, which is more primal, responsible for survival and habits compared to animal brain. So your lower brain is the one that's actually making you binge. And it was crazy for me to actually find out because, this really opened up for me because I always wondered why am I binging? Why am I getting this urge? And it's because of the lower brain. It's the survival mechanism, right? It's the one that controls emotions. It's the one that controls your feelings. It's the one that controls pleasure, pain, survival mechanism, right? Everything like that. So that's why I thought, oh, okay. So if my lower brain is trying to act like that, then why is it happening? Well, it has 3 goals. The first goal is to survive. The second is to seek pleasure. And the third is to avoid pain. And the lower brain urges you to binge in order to survive, receive pleasure, and hide away the pain. And the same thing as drugs is the same protocol. It treats binge eating as oxygen for it to survive, and you acting on its impulse completes the cycle. And this was crazy for me because now I actually understood, like, okay, so I actually do not want to binge eat. It's just my lower part of the brain, it's telling me to binge eat because it wants to relieve some pain that it has and it wants to feel better. And it says food, it sees food as a way to cope with it. And when I do it, it receives pleasure. While I feel like shit, it feels better. And then the cycle repeats and repeats. And this is probably the answer, right? This is why you binge eat, is because the lower part of your brain is technically just urging you to feed it more and more of your energy and food because it wants to escape from reality. And you do it. And at the same time, you keep doing it, you build a habit, and that habit becomes stronger and stronger, and it's hard to, stop binge eating from at that point. And essentially, the upper brain, right? So the upper brain is the one that helps you make logical decisions, and the lower brain, just like a child nags the dad, the upper brain to give him a toy, and you do it by binge eating. So essentially, the higher brain is where your critical thinking is located, is where you make logical, conclusions, logical decisions, everything like that. And the lower brain is more about the emotions, pleasure, pain, everything like that. So when your lower brain tells you to eat food because it wants to receive pleasure, the higher brain, you can't really use it because of the strong connection that you have with the lower brain because you gave it so much food and so much time that you binge ate that at that point you can't logically or critically think. That's why, like, when you have an urge to binge eat, you can't just stop and not do it. You just follow it along because your higher brain doesn't have enough energy for you to make a critical decision or a logical one that, do you really want to binge eat? No, you fucking don't. But you can't do it because your lower brain is just giving you so much power and it's controlling your life essentially. So it's like having a child, right? Like a child is the lower brain. It's asking for candy and candy for like 50 times, right? It's begging you for candy. And then you say, fine, I'm just going to give you a fucking candy, and you go binge eat. And while that child feels pleasure at, at the temporal time because it's eating food, it's getting pleasure, it's avoiding pain, the next day you feel like shit, you have shame, guilt, and that child has a stomach ache. So that's like an analogy that you can use. The next time you get an urge, it's like a child asking you for candy again and again and again. And if you give the child candy, you let them win, but at the same time, you know that they'll feel like shit and you feel like shit as a father because now your child has a stomach ache and now you feel guilty and shame from it. So it's like the perfect analogy, actually. And then you continue to develop this habit. And the only way I found out to actually do this, like for myself, is having an accountability partner who can make sure you reject the child's toy. So what I mean by that is when I had a binge eating, problem, I've been clean out for a while. I had a friend who I would call and talk to. And whenever I wanted to binge eat, I would usually distract myself by talking to them and relating my emotions to them and understanding because they also had a binge eating. And that's why it worked. You can't really talk about this to people who don't know what a food addiction is. They're just not going to understand it. with somebody who had dealt with it in the past or is currently dealing with, having an accountability partner and making sure you're on the right track with them, it helps a lot. So that was the next lesson that I learned. And in lesson 4, I had to destroy the urge to binge eat. So you have to dismiss it. You have to give very little energy to it, less power. It's like your brain telling you, I don't want to go to the gym, but you simply ignore it, drink coffee or pre-workout, and you start going to the gym. And you can change it. It's called neuroplasticity, is the ability for your brain to reprogram itself. So the more you ignore the little voice, the more training you give to your brain and body, and the less urges will come. So at this point, the lower brain is controlling your life, and the way to stop it is to give less attention to it. So every time you get an urge, you have to stop. You should not binge eat. And every time you win, you should be excited about it. You should be like, yes, let's fucking go. Like, I didn't binge, I used my critical thinking. I made a logical decision not to. I didn't give any power to the child. I am happy. I didn't binge. And you keep repeating this process every single day, every week, right? And you become better and better. And then that connection, it fades away. So it becomes weaker and weaker. And that urge to binge eat just fades away almost entirely. You still get it, but at that point, it's so small and your higher brain has so much more energy for you to critically think and logically think that you don't even want to binge at that point. So it's very important that you could change this habit. It just takes time and energy, but you could stop your binge eating. And all it takes is you just have to reject the urge to binge eat, and you have to reject the child giving him a candy like that. And this will help me fix my urge to binge eat. First, you have to be aware that the urge nagging you to binge eat. Figure out what you feel at the moment. What is your body telling you or showing you? Are your hands shaking or your legs? Are you biting your nails? Are you scratching yourself? For me, it was scratching my fingers till, well, you can see. What are the thoughts that come up when I have the urges? Listening to the voice that tells you to binge is actually you or the child asking you or nagging you for the ice cream for the 50th time. So essentially, you just gotta understand when you get an urge to binge eat, what do you feel? Look at your body, look at your hands, look at your legs, do you see anything happening subconsciously? Because everything is happening subconsciously, so you have to be aware and present and actually spot what is happening. And then one helpful tip would be to write it down so you can find a pattern. The other thing is basically you could set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes, and before you decide to binge eat, you wait for the urge to kind of lose its power, and then you can decide if you still want to binge eat or not. But at that point, you made a decision, not the brain, not the child. You made it. And that's a big difference. And that's a big improvement. So I would usually just journal what I was doing. And for me, it was this. And essentially that helped me see that, okay, so when I'm doing this, I have this urge already to binge eat. And I could easily stop myself because, okay, so if I just wait, calm down, I just become in the present moment, I could stop myself and not give in to the lower brain's work like that. And then the last thing, lesson 5, some solutions and advice for me that I've learned. So it's important to separate emotions from binge eating. You're not binge eating from emotions. What is happening is you get a trigger or an urge from your brain, and that leads you to binge eat. So to fix this, you acknowledge that you have the urge to binge and you would ignore it. And it's harder than it seems, of course. But trust me, 10 years, I understand, but one small victory is a victory. So what I would do is I would drink Diet Cokes, eat hot sauce throughout the day, drink plenty of water, decaf coffee, eat fruits, carrots at night, and it would make me not binge and it will satisfy the urge. So as you can see, you got to make sure your piss is fucking white. If your piss isn't white, you got to drink more fucking water and it will help you just be more fuller like that. And yeah, so whenever I have an urge, I still have urges to binge eat, of course, because it's been going on for 10 years, right? I can't stop it. But whenever I do, I satisfy it not by binge eating, but by doing something else. So for example, hot sauce with every meal that allows me to drink more water and keeps me more full. If, however, I do have a sweet tooth, I just drink Diet Coke, sometimes 2. Sometimes I buy a fucking whole 2-liter of Diet Coke. It doesn't fucking matter. Compared to that, to you binge eating on multiple processed food and multiple chemicals, it's way worse than just having a 2-liter Diet Coke or a small Diet Coke. It can help you a lot, and it'll fulfill that urge to binge, and the lower part of your brain will stop nagging you for it because now you got some pleasure. It reduced some pain because of the sugar, and also you're just tricking yourself that's saying hey, I just got it. I feel better. I don't need to binge eat. Same thing with apples. Fuji apples is the best for me. Carrots as well, and decaf coffee throughout the day will also stop it. And you can even drink decaf coffee at night. Coffee and also just caffeine helps you not be hungry. And I found out with decaf coffee at night, you can easily drink it and you can still go to sleep like that. So these are some tactics that I found out. And some secret sauce. So if you're still watching this, you're welcome. But and thank you, of course. And so let's go over some secret sauce that I found out. So if you do get an urge to binge eat, number one, spot it and acknowledge it. So figure out what is happening in your body. What are you thinking of? Be in the present moment. See oh, okay, so the child in my brain is asking me to binge eat. Okay, I actually see this. That's great. Number two, set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and go back to doing something that will distract you. So like I mentioned in the past, put a timer on your phone for 5 to 10 minutes and let the urge a little bit slowly, just decrease its energy towards the pull. So, do homework, go outside, do work, play some video games. They put a 5 to 10 minutes timer to distract yourself, and it'll help you a lot. And number three, now the urge isn't as strong anymore, and you can logically decide if you still want to binge. But you made a decision of the upper brain and not the lower brain, so that's progress. And if you binge again, it's okay. As long as you're improving, that's what we focus on. So with the timer, you're allowing your upper brain to gain more power, and you're allowing yourself to make a logical decision if you want to binge eat. Because you know the consequences of binge eating. You understand fully that you feel shame, you feel like shit, your skin will hurt, and you're gonna regret it. But you can't make that decision if you don't really sit down with yourself and just wait and just fully understand what is happening when the urge comes up. When a child is asking you, I want a candy, instead of giving him a candy, you wait, and then you can decide if you want to give it a candy or not. And if you do want to give it a candy, then you don't give him what it wants, right? Instead of a candy, you give him carrots, or you give him fruits, or Diet Coke, or decaf coffee, just to satisfy him, right? And that's the whole point. And the more you do this, the more progress you make, then your binge eating will go lower and lower, and that urge is going to be decreasing, and you're going to be able to make a more logical decision. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to solve this 100%, right? You're still going to get an urge to binge. And if you do binge eat, that's fine. As long as if you binge eat once a month, right? That's totally fine than binging once a week or every single day. That's still progress. And, I would even say binge eating once a month isn't even that bad of a thing, because at the end of the day, you are satisfying the little child. Of course, it's becoming a big nuisance. But if you do it once a month and you just say, okay, today I'll just let you be, I'll have whatever you want. And, I'll eat some processed food. I'll eat whatever you want. And I'm not going to be shamed. I'm not going to have guilt. And that's all. And you do it once a month and you don't overdo it. And you win and the child wins. So this is what I learned after 10 years of binge eating. Hopefully you learned the same. The most important lesson is that the lower brain controls you, and it controls you to have the urge to binge eat so it can satisfy itself, relieve some pain. And the upper brain is the one that makes logical decisions and critical thinking. And you can't do it because you train the lower brain so much. You give the child so much candy throughout the years that it's very hard for you to stop. So all it takes is being in the present moment to acknowledge it and to understand what is happening in your body, put a timer on, and then you can decide if you want to binge it or not. But you know the consequences of it, and you don't fucking want to do it. Other than that, if you do want to talk to me for free for 1 hour about your binge eating experience, I truly want to help you out. I'm very fucking passionate in this, and hopefully you can see that, I put a lot of fucking time and energy into it, because I truly want to help people understand, binge eating, because a lot of people have a different understanding, and I did as well until I researched and I talked to a lot of people. So if you do, just click the link below in the description and book a call with me. It's completely for free. Other than that, have a great rest of your day and get some vitamin D.